The foot-tapping anthems, the beats, the iconic beginnings. Music draws you in. Let's dive into the melodies that shape our lives. A journey through the symphony of your mind.
Welcome to Your Brain on Music, a podcast that asks the question, what really happens in your brain when you listen to music? Here's your host, Anthony Cirillo.
Thank you, Jim Nance, for that wonderful introduction, and thank you, everybody, for listening and in some cases viewing the podcast Your Brain on Music, where every week we take a look at what really happens in your brain when music is played. So this week, I'm proud to have as a guest Judd Sunshine. He plays piano and sings and has been entertaining audiences of all ages for over 30 years. He's been entertaining 12 to 15 times a month at retirement communities, assisted living centers, and skilled nursing facilities throughout New York State for over a decade. That was a schedule that I kept at one time and can no longer have that kind of stamina. But when he entertains, his goal is to do well-known musical pieces, sing-along, audience participation, and humor. And if you've ever seen him on a Sage Stream show, he definitely, even if it's only doing him for himself, he's definitely a humorous guy. You can find him on facebook.com/Judd, Judd, Sunshine. And so with that, we will welcome Judd to the program. Why don't you tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about yourself?
Well, I heard just mentioned, which is probably off my own bio, which is obviously out of date. I've been playing music professionally for over 40 years now, so I'm aging myself even more. It's really the only job I've ever had as an adult, really since I took a leave of absence from college back in 1977. So I guess I can go back anytime. My mom still likes to hear that. And so, yeah, just playing music as a living, started in bars to parties to weddings, kind of maybe an unusual course, making a living as a bass player in a bluegrass band for the first 7-8 years of my career, and then switched over to electric bass to play in an oldies rock and roll band, and then switched over to playing piano when there was a change in personnel in the band, and I realized I could play piano as badly as the rhythm guitarist could play rhythm guitar. Somewhere a few years ago, it was actually my wife who, she's a nurse and was working for a home care agency, and she went into one of the assisted living centers that she serviced and saw someone performing there and said, "Hey, you could do that." And so I just started looking for gigs doing that, and have now made that kind of my bread and butter, and everything else kind of goes on top of it, and it's worked out nicely.
Yeah, that's great. Interesting. One of my other artists yesterday, Nick, who is also one of our substitute hosts on Sage Stream, he had a similar journey in terms of starting out on guitar as I did, but then when I got into a band, I was always the bass player because there were so many people wanted to play guitar because, the guitar players got the girls and all that kind of stuff. And then eventually graduated to being the lead singer who happened to play bass. So, and now I do a solo thing. So I can relate to the journey and the number of years you've been performing because I'm about in the same bracket. So who actually introduced you to the music, to the first having, like in my house, we had Sinatra and whatever playing all the time. And my dad had this harebrained idea. He was going to buy me a guitar. We were going to go out as a duo. I had no idea if he sang or not. He passed when I was only 11. But everybody has a journey in how they got involved in this. Some come from musical families. What was the first spark?
Well, it was a musical family. My father was a musician prior to being drafted into World War II. And in fact, as a musician, he thought that he would be able to, and he did. He led bands at every base he was stationed at. he thought it would get him out of real duty. Uncle Sam didn't see it that way, and he did end up going. He was in at Normandy a little late for the party, but anyway, and whatever, saw some real combat duty. But yeah, so he was a musician. In fact, he met my mom before going off to the army because she was the new girl in the neighborhood, and he heard that she had a baby grand piano. But music was just central to the house. He eventually um, had to get her. Well, so after the army, I don't know how much of this is of interest, but whatever. After the army, he went to school on the GI Bill to become an arranger. Until, as he said, my mom crossed him up and decided she wanted to have a family. So he had to get a real job, and he got his dream job working at Manny's Music Store in New York City, which eventually led to him going into business for himself as a music dealer. So he stopped doing music as a profession, but music was just central. And we all, I have a brother and a sister, we all had to at least try to learn an instrument. We didn't have to marry it. We didn't have to make a career out of it. In fact, he discouraged that. And I started, like I say, essentially in high school. You got your first gig at a Sweet 16 and never looked back. To be able to do something you love and get paid for it, well, who can argue with that?
Yeah,
So yeah,
absolutely.
music was central to our life and lifestyle when I was growing up.
Yep. I was playing underage in clubs at 13 in Philadelphia. So yes, I know I know what you mean. And what you're saying and what I grew up with, is kind of actually a learning lesson, I think, for households today. I go into sometimes, you visit the grandchildren and visit our families and stuff, and you just don't hear music being played. Like in our house, I would say 8 hours a day or more, we have something playing, even if even if it's just in the background, or sometimes it's just the mood for when we're having dinner or whatever. I just music. There's so much science behind it, and more emerging every day about how it calms, how it relieves anxiety, especially with some of the elders we're speaking about. That just encourage more people to just, even if you're not performing music, listening to it is certainly important too. So you've started performing for older folks. I started that in like 1992 as well, and I never looked back either in that regard because we all have our personal stories about why we're passionate for performing for that population. So what makes you passionate about performing for older folks?
Well, I mean, the response, I guess, is the first thing that comes to mind. I mean, with a good crowd, and even when I say a good crowd, I mean give me a room full of independent seniors who can enjoy my show. Uh, I mean, it's just wonderful. They sing, they laugh, they have a great time. But at another level, when you get into the more needy ends of that population, it's amazing to see in what we see in a skilled setting, let's say, where they may be sitting there and you don't even know if they're conscious, but I can also see music cutting through. And as one activity director mentioned to me once, and I see it as true, that they may forget their family, they may forget their names, but they often don't forget how to, as she put it, pray, swear, and sing. And yeah, I mean, the simplest of songs that we grew up with can connect, and that's very rewarding. So it's that's on the more altruistic level of what we do. I mean, as a musician, there's something to be said. I have a very simple setup. I walk in, I can be ready to go within 5 to 10 minutes if they have the piano there. So there's that. I'm not schlepping around a lot of stuff. And I'll go on. This is like a tip to musicians. it's weekday work, generally speaking, at like normal people hours. Imagine that. So yeah, the effects of music, the nature of the work, it's all the ingredients add up to a nice little career.
Yeah. So, if you have one, do you have a personal story of how music has affected a person who you have entertained?
I've had an activity director come up to me and say, "Oh, wonderful show," which is always nice to hear, and especially for Charlie or Agnes over there who hasn't smiled or, I mean, I hear this more than once, and on a personal level, I remember, as my dad aged and he was he suffered from dementia.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, he I could still sit at the piano with him, and he could tap out a tune. Or there's videos. My daughter's a drummer, and she got him to keep swinging. I mean, he was that kind of. So yeah, it cuts through. And I've seen it personally. Again, whether to be specific or not, I can't think of any one incident, but it's more often, and it happens.
It's the feeling.
Real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's move on to kind of the second segment that we do with our artists. So the original premise of our show, which we're still going to try to follow, is to pick an iconic song every week and dissect it. And the intent was to get a neuroscientist on board and a musician and hit it from both ends. What happens in your brain, and then the musician, what's happening in the song, that kind of thing. But I modified that question for our Sage Stream artists to basically say, what is your iconic song choice? And you might have several. The song that if you're doing something in the middle of the day and you hear those first three chords of something, or somebody's singing a certain whatever it is. Do you have a certain song or songs that kind of stop you in your tracks, bring back reminiscing memories that are associated with things in your life?
Most of my listening is to older music. I will tune into certain stations on Sirius Radio just to train my ears to not just be stuck into the same stuff I listen to. But yeah, I can't think of a specific. And again, I keep going to a personal level where I think of my dad, where he had his sort of signature song. When he would sit at the piano, the first thing he'd bang out was Pennies from Heaven. And to this day, if I'm playing it or I'm hearing it, it's like that, it brings it back. But how it triggers a memory. I mean, I guess it's universal. You're telling me there's science to this. I shouldn't be surprised.
Well, and you actually circled back and sort of answered the question at the end with one example. You hear Pennies from Heaven, you think of your dad. So
that's the click there. Sure,
absolutely. And now this message.
Introducing Sage Stream, a dynamic platform offering live, interactive, real-time music video streaming tailored for older adults. Here's how we elevate the experience. Enjoy a rich variety of live performances, complemented by rebroadcasts and a comprehensive archive of past shows. Access over 100 top artists from around the world, including sought-after talents like Ben Morrow, guitarist for icons like Cher and Lionel Richie. Explore a wide range of musical genres such as jazz, rock, blues, classical, standards, opera, and beyond. Engage directly with artists through song requests and personalized acknowledgments, fostering connections through chat and text interaction. No hardware necessary. Simply sign in with a username and password from any device or smart TV, ensuring hassle-free accessibility. Keep your loved ones connected and engaged, combating isolation and fostering a sense of community. Elevate their quality of life with exciting and uplifting musical experiences that bring joy. Senior living providers offering Sage Stream provide many benefits. According to a University of Michigan study, 4 in 5 older adults watch musical performances on the internet. They report stress relief, relaxation, joy, improved mental health, memory stimulation, and enhanced motivation and energy. Sage Stream saves planning time. It is a powerful sales tool and boosts net promoter scores. Having Sage Stream readily available proves invaluable in various scenarios, such as when entertainers cancel, during health emergencies, and for filling challenging time slots. Sage Stream, where music meets connection, enhancing lives one tune at a time.
All right, so our third part of this I call the lightning round. I sort of borrowed it from Stephen Colbert. He does this Colbert questionnaire when he brings on a guest and he asks them 6 questions. I have more than 6, but I'm a board member of the Institute for Music and Neurologic Function, which was co-founded by Oliver Sacks and Connie Tomaino. And Oliver's no longer with us, but Connie is, and she wrote a book called Music Has Power. And essentially, it's a music therapy book for lay people. But in it, she outlines ways that people can kind of hone in on the soundtrack of their life. So if you're working with an older loved one and want to come up with that custom playlist that you want to put on an iPod or in their phone or on a headset or whatever it is, she has a whole slew of questions that you can pose to people that will help formulate that list. Caregivers can do it for themselves. We can do it in our own lives, so that maybe our kids will know what the go-to is when we're no longer able to maybe to program the music or put the music on. So I'm just going to, it's like I said, it's a lightning round. So I'm just going to throw stuff at you, and then you can answer. And if there's something you can't answer, we'll just move on. So do you have a favorite type of music?
Well, I'm an unabashed Grateful Dead head. Besides, going back to the Beatles and things like that. But yeah, I'm as an old guy myself. I hark back to the music I loved as a teenager. I'm still stuck there.
As we all are. Yeah. So is it Jimmy Hart, Grateful Dead? Drummer is a very great supporter. Mickey Hart, that's right, Mickey Hart. Great supporter of the Institute for Music and Neurologic Function. In fact, I visited the Institute last week, and somebody showed me a drum head that he has made art into, and we'll auction that off at our gala in November. So you kind of alluded to this. What you listened to when you were young? You kind of alluded to your favorite singer or band. So Grateful Dead for sure, the number one.
I guess if I have to put number one, I put number one. For in certain eras,
yes,
there were that kind of group.
Okay, so yeah. So what other groups?
Well, as I mentioned, the Beatles will never leave me, nor will they leave the planet for that matter. I also have a great love for jazz, of jazz standards, what they now call the Great American Songbook. But again, you keep going back to my dad. I mean, he taught me about Benny Goodman and Duke Ellington and Charlie Parker, and that also led to when I was in the bluegrass band. I had one of the members introduce me to Western swing, and I mean, so I'll harken back to anything that swings. That's a generic answer, but it's got to swing to me, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely, and you keep reiterating what an influence your dad was, and it's again same here with just the fact. My parents always had music on, and my mother was a ballroom dancer, and she was really good at it, and so we always always were exposed to it. And I think it's a great lesson for young people today. Expose your children to music. I mean, not just wait till they go to school to get exposed to it. Hopefully they are getting exposed to it. But of course, we don't talk religion, but in this case we talk in terms of, did you sing at church? Or are you of a religion denomination that influenced any kind of the music you might do?
Froze on me some. Well, being raised Jewish, no, I didn't sing at church. And we weren't it's interesting you mentioned that. We didn't belong to a synagogue. although I did make my bar mitzvah. And the music at in the house when my dad would still lead a seder, uh, and we would sing the songs, and so that was there, and he had a big knowledge of what they actually would sing in synagogue, although he he had his reasons for not, he was like the Groucho Marx thing. I don't want to be belong to a club that'll have me as a member. But anyway, so it was there in the traditional sense, not the religious sense, so to speak. So it was present and it's still there, and my kids still go for it too,
Yeah.
which is interesting.
So still an influence. Yeah. What about going to musicals or Broadway shows? Did you have you any influence on your music?
Um, just no, not especially. I mean, I love it. And I was involved in theater in my teens. Prior to college, I was in lighting in tech theater
Hmm.
because I didn't, I was acting and I didn't want to sing for an audition, ironically. So that put me behind the stage. But I mean, I just love it. The classic musicals. Um, yeah, yeah, but I can't translate that into what I do
Sure.
uh, in live settings. Yeah,
Yeah.
just
Um,
enjoy it.
do you remember your first concert?
Oh yeah,
Who did you
you
see?
know, I was just talking about this last night. The headliner was the Jay Giles band, uh, and second on the bill was Captain Beefheart.
Oh yeah.
And opening the show, third on the bill was some guy named Billy Joel,
Third on
and
the bill.
third on the bill, 1972, I want to say.
Oh my goodness.
Some
Okay.
of my friends.
Three Dog Night for me. So
Ah,
yeah. So do you like to dance and you have a favorite song to dance to?
Um, no, I'm not a particularly big dancer, although I will occasionally. Again, I go back to that Texas swing. I mean, if I go see Asleep at the Wheel, I try to force my wife to get up and swing a little bit. But no, not. It's funny, on stage. I'm a ham and a half, but off stage, I get a little shy in that department.
I could tell a little bit. Yeah. Do you still have records, tapes, CDs, 8 tracks?
Uh, Records, yes. CDs, yes. I can't show you. I'm looking at a reel-to-reel
Oh,
and a
absolutely.
cassette
Excellent.
tape, mainly because I'm trying to archive this times about 400, and it's I hopefully live long enough to get it done. We'll see.
There
I have
you
my
go.
dad's.
All right. So now, lightning round part two. Answer what you can, if it applies. What music do you use to wake up to?
Uh, I don't.
Okay.
I don't. I don't wake up to music.
You have a dog?
The-
You do
I
you
have a grand.
do you walk the dog?
Yes, I have to walk the dog on occasion.
Do
Yes.
you do you listen to music when you're walking the dog?
I will occasionally listen to music, yes.
Okay. When you work out.
When I work out, no. Again, morning time is sort of, I'm a news junkie, though that's where I go for that.
Okay.
And
What do you listen to in the car?
in the car, if it's music, it'll often be tuned to the Sirius Grateful Dead channel.
Okay.
Switched over to the Beatles and Stevie, what's his name? Stevie Van Zandt has this great
Oh yeah,
channel.
he does have a great channel. So what about what kind of music do you go to when?
The Underground Rush, wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. What kind of music do you go to when kind of let's say your mood and anxieties switching around, like you don't feel well or you feel overwhelmed or you need to relax or you're feeling blue or opposite you feel like celebrating. What do you listen to music during those times, and if so, is it different than the music you typically listen to?
I guess so. Let's say when I'm, if I'm going to start cooking, I will go to, again, if I don't put on a CD, or something, generally I'll go for jazz. Some really nice, I mean, I love Sirius Radio. I've been hooked on that for forever. So the jazz station tends to be my go-to there.
Awesome. Do you have any recommendations for just listeners and viewers about how they can, increase their music appreciation or music understanding?
Well, it's something I have to again train myself to broaden what I listen to. Maybe get out of my comfort zone a little bit. I think you gotta make yourself do that. So I don't know if I'm the best one to advise because I can be guilty of not doing such a thing.
Yeah, but no, it's great advice getting out of your comfort zone because there are, we go visit our granddaughters who are 8 and 11 or so. And so you can start listening to what they're listening to and it's like, okay, not sure. And then they listen because I'm a musician. When they come down and visit us, I have this a standard set that I have to perform for them and they grab the wireless microphones and are jumping all around doing stuff. So yeah, but getting out of your comfort zone, it's good advice. Because obviously we're doing this podcast to also support Sage Stream and the idea of the live streaming for older adults. Why do you think Sage Stream is important?
Well, I think anything you can do to be able to bring music to these folks that might otherwise be isolated from it is a positive thing. I mean, we both agree, and I guess science is showing us that music touches people in such a special way. And as these folks get older, maybe they're not driving, or God forbid we were in another pandemic situation. You got to keep people from being isolated, and I believe music is a good conduit to avoid that situation.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And yes, as you're probably finding out, I mean, COVID is making its comeback, and while for most of us it's going to be a mild type of thing, when it impacts a vulnerable population, it's not so easy. So yeah, what all we do is very important. Judd Sunshine, I'd like to thank you for being on Your Brain on Music. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll let you know when it's all produced and packaged, and we'll get you all the links, etc. So thanks again for being on the show.
I appreciate you asking. It was a pleasure, and I hope you have an easy time editing down some of my long-winded answers.
Of course, you heard Judd mention a few times the influence his father had on his career, and we were able to actually resurface a clip from the National Association of Music Merchants in which he relays a story of talking with a friend of his and how music influenced his life and how he was encouraging the friend to use it in his life as well. It's an interesting clip, so we'll let it speak for itself.
I used to have a debate with somebody that was on the Board of Education, who happened to be a relative of mine, but that's not. He was on the Board of Education, one of the schools in Long Island, and I used to sit with him, and he used to say how stupid it was to have these kids scratching on violins and how terrible they sound and all this kind of stuff. I said, well, that's the learning process, He says, well, I used to go to the gym, and I wrestle with my kids, and we have fun doing that. This whole thing didn't make sense to him. I said, well, to play a musical instrument, you have your whole life. I said, when you wrestle, you can't do that your whole life. So the music will stay with you. Well, anyhow, years go by, and of course Mel is now lame like we all get, and all that kind of stuff. And you can't do what you did before. And I saw him, I said, how you doing, Mel? He said, I can't walk, arthritis, all this stuff. I said, oh. I said, are you still wrestling with your kids? He said, no. He said, they're all full grown, and I couldn't do that anyhow. I can't even do it with my grandchildren. I said, that's really too bad. I said, I still play. And I'm playing with my grandchildren, and I play with my children, and we play. We get together and we play music. He said, I still can do that. I said, you didn't want to listen then. You would have had something today if you would have done a little practicing and playing an instrument. I don't know if you understood what I was saying. You're probably so brain dead already, you know. But I mean it. That I've never met anybody that has said to me, that hasn't said to me, I wish I could have played. I started to play and I gave up. And how nice it would be if I could play an instrument today. And I said, I believe everybody should play a kazoo. They should play something. I don't care what it is, but music is, you know, most important. It's soul fulfilling, you know. And that's what I want to say. All right, cut it.
Here's this episode's tip for incorporating music into your everyday life for health and wellness, brought to you from Connie Tomaino, the co-founder and executive director of the Institute for Music and Neurologic Function.
A tip I give caregivers of people who have memory problems. You know, we always think about using photo albums to help people recall, people in their lives, important individuals that they want to remember. But even with pictures, sometimes facial recognition becomes a problem. But we do know that music that's personally important has long-lasting abilities for people with memory problems. So what I suggest to care partners is to create a song album or a song for each important person in the individual's life. So a song for each child, a different song for each child, a song for siblings, and create those memories while the person is still, can still attach associations with that music. And you'll find that later on, even if the person doesn't recognize you by face, when they hear that song with you, that sense of knowing who you are will be present.
Here is this week's listener's musical memory.
Hey, I'm Greg Whitt, and I want to share a little bit about a song that made a huge difference in my life. See, I grew up in the 80s, were my heyday, back at the beginning of the compact disc era. And one of the first ones I ever owned was Peter Gabriel's CD called So, and on that song was this fantastic tune called Red Rain. And back in those days, before they had CD players in your car, you had a little Walkman, a Sony Discman that you would jack into your car stereo. And I remember popping in that CD and playing Red Rain and a bunch of other tunes off that disc, rocking down the highway. And that was the sound of freedom for me, having the music that I loved and the wind in my hair, cruising down the road, listening to these great musics that were the songs of my heyday, the songs of my youth, my college years and my high school years. And those are the things that still make me feel great. It's the power of the playlist. When I put on that music from that era, when I put on Red Rain and roll the windows down, man, I feel 18 all over again.
Your Brain on Music was written, produced, and created by me, Anthony Cirillo, with original music from Ariel Soul, a great harpist. You can find him at arielsol.com, ARIELSOL.com. Please subscribe to our group, Your Brain on Music, on Facebook. And of course, you can download this podcast from all of the typical and normal podcast providers. So we hope you subscribe to our podcast and listen to it. We'll be featuring many great artists and neuroscientists talking about what happens in your brain when music is played. Until next time, thanks a lot.